it's a rush. Yeah, when you first do it, it's crazy. You don't know what to expect, you're nervous.
The public melts away, and you're just there.
This was a brutal and gruesome point of history, and we have to remember that it was part of our history, or else we forget blood that was spilled for this, and we also forget the cost that's being shared in other places now.
That was for you. Yeah, thank you, sir. I noticed you were standing well behind the lines most of the time, sir.
No, I was not.
I am with the 2nd Regiment of York Militia. I'm the commanding officer, captain, and battalion commander for this weekend.
Present. Arms!
So I'm a sergeant, so I'm a company first sergeant. I have the corporals, so like the corporals would be the rank below sergeant. I have them work with the men, work on musket drill.
I'm a sergeant, and currently the sergeant major of the artillery within Crown Forces, so that's the umbrella organization. So yeah, I run most of the guns.
Right cheek, wrist, leg, left side, right side, head, thrust.
This and my crew are HMS Psyche. We are a naval reenactment group representing sailors from the Royal Navy of the War of 1812.
How stands the glass of band? For shame ye take no care, my boys. How stands the glass of band? Let mirth and wine abound. How stands the glass of band?
We portray soldiers' wives, so we're trying to look sort of lower class here when we do this.
The trumpets sound, the colors they are flying, boys to fight till
I narrate at events. I kind of freelance, go out to events and just come out to the battles and interpret it and explain it to the assembled public.
Now, as you're starting to get the smoke in your face, you're going to get a small taste, and I mean that literally, of what being on the battlefield was like. The big problem with that smoke is not just visibility, but also the fact that it draws out moisture. So one of the big problems soldiers complain about was bursts out on the battlefield. The constant shooting, fighting off the cartridges, you're getting a little bit of black powder in your mouth. The smoke, it is just an awful experience, and there are stories of men in the middle of battle just leaning over and vomiting from all this and just carrying on. They've got to get it done.
Basically, we start in late spring, so April, and we go till right about now. This is our last event for the season, like reenactment event, and we do about 10 to 15 events, so 10 to 15 weekends. It's a lot.
They're going to put in hundreds of hours into research, into building their equipment, into building their uniform, and they're making sure that they've done things correctly, and the passion shows.
I built my own artillery piece, everything but the iron tube barrel, and that took about half a year to do with I had a broken leg at the time.
With our music in particular, you have to make sure the songs that we find are appropriate to the time period, that the lyrics are appropriate to the time period. Because oftentimes you'll have one melody and there'll be 6, 7, 8, 12 different lyrics assigned to it over history.
There are some guys in our company who actually, such as myself, actually join other units to expand our opportunities because some of us just can't get enough.
A lot of cleaning of, cleaning your musket a lot. Sewing on buttons. Yeah, it's a good time commitment. It's a hobby, that's for sure. But some guys, do more than others.
These take about 2 or 3 hours to clean, and you got to do it every time because this residue is corrosive. So you're going to get a lot of pitting, and it's eventually going to wear through and just completely render the musket useless.
I've been doing this 8 years now, so as I'm getting kind of longer in the tooth with it, it's pretty good. I watch because we have a lot of new guys, right?
Battalion! Charge! Bayonets!
So I've been watching the new guys, making sure that they're doing okay and they're not being dangerous and stuff like that. So for me as a sergeant, it's a little bit different. I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of them. I'm kind of like a mother on the field a little bit to those guys.
Oh, where is your Highland laddie gone? Oh, where is your Highland laddie already gone. He's gone to fight the foe for King George upon the throne. And it's all
in this time period, you didn't have walkie-talkies, you didn't have Morse code. You simply communicated on the battlefield by the bugle, by the drum, and by the fife. So the bugle, they would have various different calls that you would do, alerting soldiers to come to arms, to parade, to retreat. It's able to get the officer's voice above the loudness of the battlefield. The drum helps with the troops. It keeps them in cadence, keeps them in time, and it's another communicating device, and the fife boosts morale. Which is a very important part in warfare, is if your troops aren't happy while they're fighting, well, they're not going to fight for you for much longer.
It's so thick, the first you could see and identify your opponent was about 20 paces away. So every army fighting with black powder knew they had to have a way to make sure they were identified. So just like sporting events, bright and elaborate uniforms was the best way to do it. So the British wore bright red, the Americans wore bright blue, red team, blue team, Leafs, Habs, simple enough. You thought you were clever and you wore green, gray, or black? Bad news, everybody's probably going to shoot at you. The Battle of London Plain.
So there's a lot of great elements to reenacting, and at the end of the day, when you're sitting around the campfire, there's a serene peace that comes over you. And it's just the peace of knowing that you trust the people around you with your life. They will take care of you in a scenario where the boat tips over or you've got a problem. And some of the challenges that you face. So the adversity really builds that camaraderie, and just spending a night around a campfire with them is incredibly relaxing.
Being able to be with friends and acquaintances and be out camping and relaxed and escape the modern world and all the pressures that go with that. And here our main concern is kind of figuring out what the battlefield is going to look like, and what units are going to go where, and do our guys have enough powder to burn and that. So it's an escape. I get to leave the 21st century for a weekend.
For me, it's more important to know, how did the equipment get somewhere versus, well, now it's here. And it's like, well, but how did you move it there? How did it get there? The men, the people, the women, the horses, the boats, whatever, how did it get there, and how was it done? Because a lot of that's lost, and I'm using this hobby to rediscover stuff that we haven't known for a long time now.
I think, especially in this day and age, it can be very easy to forget what actually happened in these events. Like, the way that we are taught about them is in textbooks, it's lines on pages, it's names, it's dates. There isn't any life to it. And if you can get something together like this so people can realize that there were people involved, there were families involved, not only people who were involved in the war effort, but people who just happened to be living in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's a story that we hear today, and this is a story that it feeds all the way back through history.
Definitely from a learning perspective, it's very important to have these events go on. These aren't about glorifying war or anything in that sense, and some people get the wrong impression that, we all come out and we're all boys, we like to play soldier, little boys do that, older men like to do that too, but it's not, it's to educate, because, if you have seen or you see in the battles, it's not glorifying that you killed the other side or whatever. It's, people came out, they did stuff, and you learn about the history in the past.
It was really tough back then, 200 years ago. They didn't have medicines, they didn't have anything that we have today, all the comforts that we have in life today, like, enough food to eat, all of it. I mean, it was very hard to live back then. I think it's important to make people understand that we came from these people and that they toughed it out, and we're here because of them.
It's not a part of history that most Canadians know about. North Americans, British, nobody knows about this. It's kind of like a forgotten war. And largely I understand why. It was a side kind of show to the big war in Europe against Napoleon. But it was really crucial in the forging of two nations. I know it sounds cliche, but the United States really came into its own after the War of 1812, and Canadians really started to slowly identify as being not necessarily British and not American after the War of 1812.
Some talk of Alexander and some of Hercules, of Hector and Lysander and such great names as these. But of all the world's great heroes, there's none that can compare with the
The world is racked with conflict and horrors all over, except here. We have not felt the sting of war in our home for over 200 years, and it causes a disconnect, so that when people see things like the fighting in Syria, or they see things like fighting in Ukraine, and they just separate it. Oh, that's somewhere else. That doesn't happen here. And they can't really build the empathy towards the situation. And I think it's important for us to remember that war touched this place too. So this was a brutal and gruesome point of history, and we have to remember that it was part of our history, or else we forget blood that was spilled for this, and we also forget the cost that's being shared in other places now.
Singing tout, out, 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 out to the British Grenadiers.